Y'all want to talk about Amanda Seales on Club Shay Shay, who is clearly. How'd you finally gonna get your moment to?
Yeah, man. I've been trying to bring
kick her
up.
back in.
I've been trying to bring up Amanda Seales for a while. Definitely not to kick her back in. I just.
Okay, thank God, because the way you was setting up, it almost seemed like you was ready to let her have it.
No.
I'm not gonna let you do it. Be careful. That's our cancer sister now, bro.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I understand that there's cameras on, and I understand that because I do think it matters. I do think it matters how we talk about each other, especially in public, in mixed spaces and things like that over the internet. I think that stuff matters.
That's funny, mixed spaces. That's funny.
I wish she felt like that because she got a lot of shit off her chest, which, again, is her right. I go back to when she went on her Instagram live, basically said a lot of black spaces. She feels discluded from a lot of black spaces and, just not really appreciated and supported. She's been in the industry for a long time. I go back to, MTV when they were doing Spring Break and she was Amanda Diva and she was one of the correspondents on TRL and shit like that back in 99. So I recognize that Amanda Seales has been around for a very long time. And she probably should be a bit more, revered than she is currently. But that's kind of the point, What I really wanted to talk about was what does it take for you to get disinvited from the cookout, right? We always talk about white people that are invited to the cookout. What about the black people, black celebs that probably should be able to come, but you're not going to call them and let them know that the cookout is happening, right? I think Amanda Seales is definitely one of those people that you don't call.
Or even doubling down. You let them know the cookout is happening, but they should not come.
But they can't come. Yeah, for sure.
They can't come.
So I did start the interview with Shannon Sharpe, who's honestly, I don't know when he became the black Barbara Walters, but when you got something to get off your chest, apparently you got to go see Shannon. So I found a lot of things wrong with it. I found a lot of inconsistencies in some of her storytelling. And
did you watch the whole thing?
I did not watch the whole thing. That shit is 3 hours and no fucking way. They're both not interesting enough for me to sit and watch 3 hours of that. But from the parts that I did see, I think she's kind of not, I don't want to say disturbed. Disturbed is the wrong word, but I believe she's a highly sensitive individual. I think she's highly sensitive. I think there may be more to her condition than just an attitude problem. But that doesn't mean that she's not annoying, and that doesn't mean that people have to like her or champion her or anything like that. And I'm okay with people defending her, but I'm also okay with people not wanting to be around her because she does seem a lot. She was combative in the interview. You know what I mean? I think anyone who has a difficult time listening to someone else's perspective, even if just throwing shit at the wall, even if that's the case, there's a way gracefully to get that across. And this is not me trying to police black women or anything like that. I think there's a way. I tell my kids all the time, you actually cannot be yourself you cannot be your full self all the time. I think that's a myth. And I think people need to stop telling people that everyone has to accept you at your full whatever of who you are. It's not true. You have to dole out the parts of yourself that are the most tolerable for the longest amount of time. And that's just survival. You know what I mean? So, I just think she has this idea of how people should see her that I don't think everyone else carries. I think she also lied a lot in that interview, which again, people said Cat Williams lied. People say Monique lied. Apparently people go up there to Shannon Sharpe and Cap. So,
you were talking about, everybody talking about the year of the truth. Now it's the year to get your lies off.
Yeah, this is the year to Cap.
To lie and crash out.
Honestly, if it's believable and you say it with enough big words, then yeah, people will 100% roll with it. You know what I mean? But and I'm just not petty enough to really like sit there and like do TikTok stitches and dissect the inconsistencies in her in the things she says, but there was just a lot of cap in that shit, like period. So like one thing that came out was that she was diagnosed autistic, right? She was diagnosed on the spectrum. So a lot of people use that to basically say, you know, oh, well, that kind of puts things into perspective. You know, the fact that she's on the spectrum, maybe she does have trouble with like social interactions and doesn't necessarily realize when she's coming across a way. Turns out she's never been diagnosed. She admitted herself that she's never been diagnosed clinically. She only essentially talked to other people who have been diagnosed and said, yeah, you know what, that actually sounds like me too, which a lot of people do apparently, you know, self-diagnosis, which, you know, is just being autistic is not a personality trait, right? Like it's an actual imbalance that a lot of people suffer from. So the fact that people are, you know, associated with like having high level of interests or having being highly intelligent or just quirky, you know what I mean? Like you can be all of those things and not autistic, you know what I mean? So it kind of just exposes that a lot of people use that shit as a blanket to justify like being a fucking nightmare to be around. And people need to go see a psychiatrist and get tested before you start making claims like that. It's dangerous. Did y'all see it at all?
Yeah, I watched the interview.
I have no idea who this Amanda Seales chick is. I went and searched her IMDb. I've never seen any of the stuff that she's been in, created, written.
You didn't see Insecure?
Directed.
You didn't watch Insecure?
No.
Wow.
And I don't know her. I checked her whole shit, bro. I saw Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I was like, oh, I seen that when I was a kid, and I thought it was like 2020. I was like, oh, never mind.
You don't remember Amanda Diva?
Yeah, but you listen to Flowetry though, right?
Flowetry?
Yeah.
Like the song? The music group?
Yeah.
She's in there?
Allegedly she was. After a while.
Allegedly
she performed. Yeah, like I don't know if they actually
Flowetry was
released
two
like
chicks, no?
Yeah, Flowetry was two bitches. I don't know.
it was Marsha and Natalie, but when Natalie left,
she did for like a summer
live shows. Yeah, she did some live
like
shows on stage with
not
with
enough
Marsha.
to make it on their Spotify.
And everybody was like, "Who the fuck is this?" Yeah, they're like, "Yo, who the fuck is this?" They was expecting to see Flowetry, and she got like they turned their back on her. But when she started, to her recollection, she said that when she started singing, everybody started turning their backs again, like to her to see her because she could actually sing and she had talent. But everybody felt like duped because they came to see Flowetry and they got just
not
one
Flowetry?
part of it. Not Flowetry, yeah.
Yeah, just a tree.
Just a tree.
Yeah. Because the other girl was the flow part. So they just got the tree.
Yeah, the flowist.
Yeah, you know, so that's the equivalent of like you being on a basketball team and like niggas finding out you can shoot and now they put you on the bench. Like what the fuck? Like that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. So again, she's very sensitive and she has a high she has like a just her, I don't know, her tuning is off, you know? But again, that's her right. She deserves respect. She doesn't deserve to be castigated online or anything like that. So
yeah, I think, I mean she's from LA, so she's had a lot of people probably in her corner that she thought was riding for her but wasn't. There's not a lot of good friends that you can make in LA.
That's true.
And of course I'm talking
for real
from an outsider, but I hear it all the time from people.
I think enough people say it for us to believe it.
Yeah. So I think that calling her just sensitive might be a little dismissive just because when you're dealing with a lot of people that kind of like try to kick you back in, and I can say that she probably has people in her corner that she really enjoys and loves, but she chooses to highlight the people that do her wrong because the reason why they're doing her wrong, she doesn't feel is justifiable because they don't really know her that well. And we're talking about it right now. We don't know her from a can of paint. I could be wrong, but speaking from a place of having people who, I don't know if y'all can relate, but I've definitely had people who didn't like me but didn't even know me.
Yeah.
And that shit is very annoying. Just because how can you, what are you basing this off of? You know what I'm saying? And I guess, yeah, like, to her point, she's like, yeah, it's none of my business. That's your business. You got to handle that. If you don't like me, whatever. But it still does hurt because it's like, you didn't even really give me a chance to show you who I was before you decided you didn't like me. If I show you who I was and you don't like me, that's fair too. But you're not going to go and try to get other people not to like me just because of your issues with me. That's what I have a problem with. And that's where I'll step in and intervene. So that's the position I feel like she comes from a lot of times, especially with this instance of she talked about going to a party and being with one of her friends that invited her to this party, and a security guard being like, oh yeah, you can't come in because this lady said you can't come in. But like
the person who threw the party. Because I think that's important.
The person who threw the party.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, the person who threw the party said that you can't come into this party. I don't know what you have to do to like not be allowed into a party.
I have a guess.
I was curious. Curious.
I have a few guesses on what you have to do.
Is the messiness? Of
combat? Just being, bro. If you watch the interview, you see how combative she was with Shannon. You know what I mean? Like, it's just.
So what do you mean by combative? Like, what do you mean? Like,
I mean, so you're telling me a story, right? You're telling me a story about when you were a kid, right? Mm-hmm. And you're saying, yeah, man, this dude used to bully me, right? He used to bully me all the time. Like, he always made fun of my shoes, right? He always laughed at me about my shoes. And one time he took my shoes off and threw them in the trash. And I say, well, maybe he actually liked your shoes and was jealous that he couldn't get shoes like those. And so, it made him feel insecure that you had such nice shoes. And so that was him, kind of acting out in that way and not being able to express it. And you go, no, he was just an asshole. You don't say I don't give a fuck. You say, no, he was an asshole. You weren't there. I was there. I know what happened. Like, people who don't invite room for like another perspective or just like being able to like diagnose the situation in a different way. To me, it's just always like, why are you so married to your position? Right? It's like,
but that wasn't her problem with it. Her problem was with Shannon basically letting anybody go up there and like talk about whatever. And like, yeah, he can ask questions, but the way that he asked those questions was almost like trying to get her to see the other side of things. Listen, this time I know better than anybody, like devil's advocate. I do it a lot, but there are times where that energy is invited, and there are other times where you kind of just let people get their shit off, and you don't be like, oh well, maybe this felt like that. I'm not talking about that right now. I don't give a fuck how they felt. I'm telling you what happened to me and how I felt.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that with nobody else, you let everybody come up here and talk about their experiences, and you just say, oh, they did that for real? Like, you let them kind of talk and get shit off. And yes, you ask questions sometimes, but not in the same way that I do kind of agree that he kind of did have like a plan a little bit to kind of ask her certain questions. And
you think Shannon Sharpe ambushed Amanda Seales?
I do think he's a little compromised. I do think that he went into this interview
maybe unintentionally. Like, maybe he thought like the questions that he asked and that he was going to ask was not necessarily questions that he necessarily wanted to know, but more so questions that like, all right, this is what the talk is, and this is what the talk is, and because that's what he usually does. He usually just talks about shit that's going on right now. Because he's not really much of a journalist. He's not a deep diver. He's not going to talk about the early moment. He's not going to mention your early moments in your career. He's not doing that type of homework.
People acting like he's Piers Morgan, bro. This shit is weird as fuck. Like
It's more conversations than an interview.
He's not interviewing people. He's just literally just talking to motherfuckers that
which makes
him to come up there. By the way,
everybody's coming to that show anyway. It's like why is everybody coming up there?
So they can get their shit off.
Can get it's clout. It's clout based, bro. Like all this shit is clout based, and it's fine again. But we get to peel it apart, and we get to like take the pieces and kind of hold them up to the light and see what's up with it. You know what I mean? Because that's the nature of the platform. So, again, I don't have a problem with her defending herself, but I wonder why she always needs defending. There has to be a moment of self-reflection. There has to be. And me personally, I don't enjoy being around people who don't invite other perspectives, regardless of what the topic is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to paint. I wasn't there, so I'm not trying to paint your experience to be anything other than your experience. But if the interaction included two people, then there were two people experiencing that moment, right? And just because you're the one here talking doesn't mean that is what happened. That's not what that means.
Why are you more concerned with what this person experienced than what I'm talking to you about how I experienced it? If you give the fuck that much about the person that did this wrong to me, have them up here. You're not interviewing them, you're interviewing me. So how come when I'm giving you my experience, you think that's an invitation for you to be like, oh, well, how do you think they felt?
So,
like what about the teacher? You know what I'm saying? Like, I grew up this way. This is my experience. Like, what makes you think that's the time for
because
you
it's
to
a conversation
put that energy into the room?
Because it's a conversation and not an interview. She was not being given a deposition. That's not what was happening. She would love for it to be just her perspective. Then go on your Instagram live and listen and talk to the 2,000 people that you have on there that still follow you, and just do that if you want to be the only perspective there. You went up there to have a conversation, and then you didn't like being challenged. And I guarantee you that her problem in all of these circles is that she doesn't like being challenged. She even said something that, because you're actually going to make me kill her. Like you are, because not saying that you're like bringing that, but like, in order to give the full context of where my perspective is coming from, I'm going to have to include more details. Such as when she mentioned that she has this narrative around her being a mean girl. And her response to that was, how can I be the mean girl and it's Issa's set and it's Issa's show, right? How can I be the mean girl when you're my boss? Because how could that be? Because you could fire me. 5 seconds before that, she said that she's never felt protected by Issa, right? Maybe Issa not firing you was protecting you. How can both be true? How can she never protected you, but you had this perception of you being a mean girl, but you weren't fired. You stayed employed for 5 years. How can both be true? You're saying that nothing like that ever happened? Because she never said she wasn't a mean girl. She said she doesn't have the capacity to be a mean girl. Very similar to the language that people use when they say, "Oh, I can't be racist because I don't have the power to be racist. I may hold bigoted beliefs, but I don't have the actual power to be a racist." Which, correct, doesn't make you not a fucking bigot. Like it just like that's why they're two different words. So I just think for the most part, it's hard to you got to understand how you come across to people. It's really that simple. And again, her perspective is her perspective. She's entitled to it. But what is your goal? Do you want to? Nobody complains their way to success. That's just not something that happens. So hopefully she gets what she wants ultimately. And but I don't think this was the best way to do it. I do want to make one clarification. Highly sensitive person is a psychological term. And it's related to someone's ability to process criticism, not necessarily that they're sensitive in the way that people, oh, you're just being sensitive. No, not that. It's an actual like psychological thing that happens to you when you're the target of criticism or another person's frustration. So
I'll close with this and say, what if the reason why I'm being real sensitive is because your perspective is rooted in only my interpretation of this reality and not rooted in the situation of what actually happened. Like, I can't give you the full context of everything, but in the moment, I know how I felt, and I know what, like, all the other, like, different bits and pieces that added up to this moment. And so you're looking out. I mean, you're looking in. You're like from the outside looking in. And how come nobody takes my side in that?
Sure.
That's I think I could definitely see that being a very frustrating thing to deal with. You know, especially if you're around people that so-called, like, if you're seeing a movement of like, oh, protect black women, listen to black women, and nobody's listening to me, you know, for reasons why, because of things that they might have heard that I might have been difficult on set or some other, you know, shit that might have happened.